You do hang in there for this entire thing. Just, know that there's a lot of details in here that I don't go into. And this is a fairly simplistic overview of my thought process for the masses versus going into the specifics of how a line array is different than a point source and things like that. So this is just kind of a good overview of where I start with the process. The first thing I generally do when I'm starting to put together a new wall is, I start with what the customer requirements are and really how loud they need the system to be given the space that they're going to put it into. So, if they've got a room that's 25 feet by 50 feet, it's important to know not only the size of the room, but how loud do they want it to be at the best listening distance, which is maybe 15 feet, and then how loud does it need to be when you get all the way back to the 50 feet back. So I kind of work off the furthest distance and what the minimum loudness it can be there is, and I generally settle on around 90 decibels at the furthest distance. So the bulk of this example I'm going to give is going to be based on 90 decibels at roughly 50 feet. And, the first thing that I, have to look at when measuring all this are the speakers that are being used. And there's something called speaker sensitivity that matters, more than just about anything. So to kind of show you, illustrate the speaker sensitivity, and, some of this is going to sound really basic to people that know these things. To some people, this is going to be over their head. But in any event, I've got 3 speakers here. So to understand the importance of speaker sensitivity, I've got 3 speakers here. First, I've got a 12-inch JBL K120. I've got a 4-inch Fital Pro 4FE 37, I believe it is, 4FE 35. And I've got a little tiny Visiton BF37. So I've got a 1.4-inch speaker. I've got a 4-inch speaker. And here I've got the larger JBL 12-inch speaker. The speaker sensitivity of the larger JBL is about 103 decibels. So that means that if I put 1 watt into this speaker and then measure the decibels at 1 meter, it will be 103. Okay. Come over here to the 4-inch speaker. Okay. This one has a speaker sensitivity of 91. So 1 watt, 1 meter, I'm going to get 91 decibels. The little Visiton here only gets 74 decibels for speaker sensitivity. That means 1 watt, 1 meter, 74 decibels. So what that translates to is if I were to just simply add more speakers and put 1 watt into each of them, one JBL with 1 watt at 1 meter will be the same as having 16 of these 4-inch speakers with 1 watt and 1 meter, or the same as having 800 of the little 1.4-inch speakers at 1 watt, 1 meter. And it's not just a linear scale, so we'll explain that. But that's all really important in terms of calculating, just how loud this thing will be and what it will take to accomplish it. Because I design my systems typically to be good to about 90 decibels, and in this case at 50 feet, that's sort of my minimum requirement. So if I come over here, you're going to see, and everything, by the way, with SPL seems to be done with meters. So I've done meters converted to feet. So here I've got at 16 meters, which is 52.5 feet, I want to be at 90 decibels. Every time I cut that distance in half, I'm picking up 6 decibels. So if my goal is to be looking at around, at 50 feet, 9 decibels, if I go all the way back to 1 meter, which is how we generally measure SPL, I'm looking at needing 114 decibels at 1 meter. If I can achieve that, then I know everything will work for that 50-foot long room. And then using that number, I can use that to calculate just how much power I'm going to need in watts to create that. So if we come over here using a speaker, an SPL calculator versus using actual formulas, I can put in that my speaker sensitivity is, we'll do 91, okay? For the sake of this example, we're going to start off by just saying that we're only using 1 speaker. Keep in mind that 1 speaker at 10 watts is no different than 10 speakers at 1 watt. So we'll start off keeping it simple and just say that we've got 1 speaker at a distance of 1 meter, which is 3.28 feet. Okay. And we'll do 1 watt. And if I do calculate, you'll see down at the bottom here that we're at 91 decibels. Okay. Now I want to get up to 114. So I'm going to start changing how many watts I need and see where we get. We know that if I add 10 times the watts, so 1 times 10 is 10, I should get an additional 10 decibels. So now I'm at 101. Okay? I want to get up to 114, so I have to now multiply the 10 times 10 again. I get to 100. Okay? And if I calculate, I'm at 111. So I need 3 more decibels. And we know that if we double the watts, we get 3 decibels. So 200 watts, calculate that, I'm at 114 decibels. And if I can get 114 decibels at 1 meter, then at 2 meters I'll get 108, at 4 meters 102, and so on and so forth. So I know that my system needs to be 200 watts at a minimum. Now again, I can have 1 speaker at 200 watts, or I can have 200 speakers at 1 watt. If I do 1 watt into 200 different speakers, and I calculate that, you'll see that it doesn't have any impact at all. You'll see I'm still at the same 114 decibels. Okay? So now if I take this a step further and say, well, all of these speakers, I have 250 speakers, okay? So if I need 200 watts divided by 250 of these speakers, I need 0.8 watts in each speaker. So let's do this. 0.8 watts, 250 speakers, and I have my 114 decibels still. Now we take it a step further. In my system, there's actually 5 channels that employ these 3 and 4 inch speakers that we're using for our example. So of those 5 channels, each of them needs to get 50 watts because 250 watts total divided by 5, 50 watts each. So now I can base what my amplifier requirements are. I know I need an amplifier that's going to provide a minimum of 50 watts per channel for 5 channels, and then the smaller speakers, which are a whole separate thing. And then I generally will double that just so I've got headroom, just why not, you know? So in this case, I'm designing a wall for a 25-foot by 50-foot room. I'm going to be looking at about 500 watts, 400, 500 watts of power, and that'll get me everything I need out of the system. So that's my starting point. To give you a bit of perspective, when I built the first 3 of these walls, I was dealing with the same thing, a 91 decibel sensitivity. My total power for just those smaller speakers, those 3 and 4 inch speakers, was 5,900 watts. So if I do 5,900 watts with 1 speaker at 91 decibels, and I calculate that, we were up at 128 decibels at 1 meter. That's loud. You can certainly tolerate it, but not very long. That kind of sums up the math between how I figure out what I need in terms of amplifier power. The next thing we'll talk about in another video at some point is going to be how we're going to wire the whole system up, because there's a million different ways you can accomplish the same thing, and there's advantages and disadvantages to each of them. So we'll do that in the next few weeks.